Hey everyone, I'm so sorry about that. Let me adjust my screen here. I'm so sorry about that. Sometimes Saturdays, you plan things out in a certain way. I was late getting to the gym. It was a busy week. I had a training at work. I had not gotten to the gym all week. So when I got there, I had to try to squeeze in what I could squeeze in. And I had to stop by Target to get something and then CVS to get something. And then I just got backed up, and a good show, a good broadcast, a good live stream, whatever you want to call it, it requires some preparation. So there were some things that I had to do to get ready for this show. So my apologies. I'm going to play my introduction, and then after that, I'll jump in, and then I'll bring in my two guests, and we'll talk about money for a little while. So I'll see you guys on the other side of my intro. I've got my tea. The wind is blowing outside. I've got my hat, my scarf. There's a bird out there in the hallway. So I'll see you. There is a bird out there, a pigeon in the hallway. They get trapped in my stairwell sometimes. Anyway, I'm going to play the intro, and then I will jump in. So enjoy the music, and I'll see you on the other side. All right, hello everyone. Welcome back to Big Discussions 76. This is my original channel. For those of you who don't know, my name is Dr. Anwar Youssef Dunbar. And happy Saturday. I got a text message here from someone. Okay, give me a second here. Uh, all right, so it is January 14th, and we're going to talk some money today. I have two guests who they talk about money pretty regularly. This channel has gone through numerous evolutions, but it started off as a money channel. And from time to time, I will bounce back to money. So I see some people here in the chat. I think Mrs. Sexy Red TV, I think you're one of Sheed's people. Thank you for coming through. Professor Black Ops. Thank you. Oh, geez. Thank you, Professor Black Ops, for being here. Flawless Mentality in BE. Salute. to the gods. Alonzo, fam, sheed, we here. Okay, give me a second, everyone. I have to okay work some quick magic here. Give me a moment. Okay. A wise man once said, "We're going to build it as we fly it." A wise but sometimes unpopular man. Okay, let me. Okay, why is that not copying from me? Copy, copy. Okay, hold on. I know I could do this. This normally it's giving me emojis instead of just copying from me. Um, all right, let's do it this way. Everyone, just be patient. Just be patient. Uh, I'm just gonna do it the long way. Okay, there's that one. They're already in my memory, my email's memory. Hold on. All right, copy. Uh, I did send this. Okay, there it goes. You guys should have it. Okay, all right. So let me jump in here. Dead space on a live stream is not a good thing. All right. The equalizers here too. YouTubing is hard work. I'm just gonna go on a little rant here. Being a content creator, creating streams, it's not easy. I think most of us try the best that we can, and I think this is considered open source, so people can leave comments as they see fit. Over on my entertainment and media channel, someone left me something last night I didn't like. Okay, I've been using shorts. I've gotten into using shorts and taking advantage of that feature because I have multiple channels and because the holiday season was pretty crazy. I left a short over on my entertainment and media channel because I haven't dropped anything over there recently. So someone, I don't know if he's a member of this subscriber base because all the channels are different, but he wrote me because I left a short saying I'm going to upload something over here really soon. It's been busy. Stay tuned. I got left this message. Announcements are not necessary. Just make a short with the content in it. This short of yours was basically an ad for your other stuff. I don't really get the need for a short like this. So I responded to the guy. I was cordial. I responded. I said, "Thank you. It's my channel and I can do what I want to with it. If you want to unsubscribe, you're more than free to do so." And then he said, "You do you, bro." And I think he unsubscribed. But I'm just saying this to say that this is it looks like all fun and games, but this thing is hard work. And it's a labor of love for those of us involved. And it's not until you get on this side of the camera that you understand what's going on. A lot of people want to tell you what to do and tell you how to do it, but until you get on this side of the camera, you don't really know what all goes into it. Uh, so who would be interested in this? As I was getting ready for this stream, I was thinking back to uh, for those of you who don't know, I see some new people here. I'm a writer. My whole purpose for coming to YouTube was as a writer. So I write, I blog. I have two blogs. I'm working on a book. My first blog, I started it in 2016. And many of my first pieces were money pieces, just like this one. Alonzo actually read one of my pieces about a year or so ago. But this is one of the pieces, one of the earliest pieces that I wrote. This is below in the description box. Um, This one was about getting your matching contribution. So I've been interested in financial literacy for a while. I think it's fun, and so I wrote this one. Are you getting your matching contribution? A discussing on saving for retirement. This is something that I was very ignorant of when I started my federal career. This is something that my mentor had to put his foot up my rear end for me to get started. But I did. But it's something I didn't know about, so I wrote about it. I wrote about that. I wrote about. I'll show you one more. Um, the law of compounding interest. I wrote a blog post about the law of compounding interest. This is a quote here from Albert Einstein. Compounding interest is the eighth wonder of the world. He or she who understands it earns. He or she who doesn't pays it. Okay. Now, a friend of mine at that time from the academy, she took a look at my blog and she said, well, as I was reading your stuff, I was wondering who your audience is. So, in other words, who would be interested in learning about matching contributions? Who would be interested in the law of compounding interest? Who would be interested in what a net worth is and what an emergency fund is? Well, people who are interested in money, people who uh, realize they don't know enough and want to learn more. That's who would be interested in such a thing. And this was a professional as well who asked me this. So I don't know if that means she wasn't interested in this stuff or what, but she said, okay, well, I was reading these things and I was wondering who your audience is. But I think for a better perspective, I think we should ask someone else from the academia. Let's see what Dr. Michael Eric Dyson has to say about financial literacy.
Get education, we don't close the gap in wealth as much as even white brothers and sisters do with their education and ones who ain't even been to college. You know why? Because we got baby and boo boo and man and all them in the family that we don't forget. Now, people who would manage well say, get rid of your family, don't let them leave y'all against black folks. You know, we got folk in prison, folk on the way to prison, trying to keep them out. We got babies and babies' mamas and stuff, to be real. So what ends up happening, they begin to siphon off the wealth production and creation of the family. We got to find a way to address that while at the same time being socially conscientious about the production of our own wealth so that we don't end up in the poorhouse with everybody else.
That was from the the 45th annual Congressional Black Caucus. And I think that was 2015. I love Dr. Michael Eric Dyson. I love him. We got to get the reparations for the younger generation because the dominant society is denying our current generation from prosperity and da. I love listening to him go on. I think he's having a beef now with him and Mark Lamont Hill are having a beef with Dr. Boyce Watkins. But that was Dr. Michael Eric Dyson in that little drop. He was talking about, there was a wealth panel, and he was talking about the things that within the community hold Black wealth creation back. And in short, a lot of it's self-inflicted from our families and from other community things. Recent videos. I'm going to bring the guest up really soon. Recent videos. For those of you who don't know, I'm a scientist. I have a science and technology channel. It's called Big Discussions 76 Science and Technology. And I just dropped two recent live streams that are money related, but not directly. I interviewed Dr. Patrick Dix. If you watch Erica Williams' channel, you've seen Dr. Patrick Dix over there. He's an automation specialist. And we talked about, on my science and technology YouTube channel, we talked about all the potential jobs that are going away due to automation. So that has a definite financial component to it. I was just in Target less than an hour ago, and there was a long line, because I think they only had like 3 registers open and the rest were the automated registers. This is a sample from my discussion with Dr. Patrick Dix. The link is below. I'm gonna drop it in the chat. This is me and Dr. Dix talking about automation. I'll use the short one. Well, that sounds like what you and Erica talked about when you guys discussed, I believe you guys were discussing the gas company and in terms of turning people's gas on and off. Instead of going to the house and having to fight with somebody, you just sit in your office and hit the button, boom.
Oh yeah, we were talking about the electric company, because people that used to go cut people's electricity off have gotten killed, because you're actually physically going out there, use a I forgot the name of the technology. It's some kind of receiver. It's some kind of it's a receiver. I can't think of the name of it, but they can remotely turn your power on, turn it off. Because you know, when you used to see a truck pull up, they used to have people actually go and check the meters. Now everything is computerized. They used to have meter check. Oh, that's a good form of automation. You got rid of people that went around reading meters, which is a very low skill job. We don't need that anymore, because I could tell you somebody's meter only used this amount of kilowatts. Oh, well, we don't need you anymore. Well, what can I do? Well, you had a low level job. We converted that to digital technology. That's a perfect example of automation. Even the water meters used to have meter readers. They would pay $10 an hour. We don't need a meter reader. We need you to go around to put the device on it to tell us what's the actual reading, because you can misread somebody's water meter, or do it higher or lower depending on if you don't like them.
That was a sample from my discussion with Dr. Patrick Dix regarding automation. The video is here. I just dropped it in the chat. If you've watched Erica Williams' channel, chances are you've seen Dr. Dix. He calls himself the king of automation on Instagram. That's significant because all of us need to think about if our jobs are going to be needed in another 10 years. Some jobs will not be needed going forward. So it's best to think accordingly. This week, red team, blue team. Gabe A is here. Salute to Gabe A. I'm going to show one more excerpt. 2 nights ago, I did another stream myself over on my STEM channel regarding the freezing of eggs. That's a big thing right now. Women freezing eggs for later use. So in that stream, I didn't talk about the social implications and whether they should or they shouldn't do it. Some ladies, they develop breast cancer and they need to do that, but it's something that's becoming more and more prevalent. And that's a science and technology story. So I covered that. It's a little dense in terms of content, but a small snippet of that discussion looked at what are the costs of a woman freezing her eggs and then having to unthaw them and to try to fertilize them. So this little snippet here involves the costs. Salchi's there in the chat. Salchi, I uploaded the clip on Instagram. He said there wasn't enough information in there. There's more. But we're talking money today. This is something that's going on. And, well, this is something that's going on, so it's relevant. So this is the last clip, and I'll bring Alonzo up, and we'll get this discussion going. Oh, I don't have it queued up. Give me 1 second. Alonzo, you looking pretty dapper back there, man. I should have. I feel a little underdressed. Okay, nope, that's the wrong folder. Bear with me, people. Okay, once again, shout out to Salchi, the equalizer, there in the chat. In that stream, I was kind of doing a comprehensive discussion of it, the actual scientific techniques, what it is, why women do this, why more women are doing this, and then the cost. But again, Salchi on Instagram pointed out, well, that those articles didn't cover this whole laundry list of things as well. But this just gives you a brief discussion of the cost of freezing eggs. Now it has to load. Alonzo, I'm gonna bring you up. It's loading, and then if you have some words on this, it'll be interesting to hear what you say afterwards. So I'm going to bring Alonzo Hall up right now. And as soon as it gets done loading, I'll play that. And then if you have some thoughts from the financial sector, you can let me know. How you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you for having me.
Okay. You know, everyone, I'll say this. Me and Alonzo, we chatted earlier, and I opened the stream by talking about YouTubing. Everyone, if you're going to be a YouTuber, and if you're going to show your face and use your government name, you got to be careful about what you put out there, because the internet is permanent. And if you're going for a new job, well, if you're at a current job, or if you're a part of a business partnership, people will scour the web to see what you're putting out there. So if you're sitting behind an avatar, you know, that's fine. But if it's you and you're using your government name, then you've got to be careful. Okay. Oh, there it is. Okay. This is a short one, Alonzo. It'll be on and off in a second. Here we go. So this piece is also below in the comment section. So if you're thinking about doing this, this is how much the bill will be. Is this an elitist thing? How much does the procedure cost? At most centers, the egg retrieval procedure costs about $10,000, and that doesn't include the drugs, which alone can range from $3,000 to $5,000. I'm going to read that again. At most centers, the egg retrieval procedure costs about $10,000, and that doesn't include the drugs, which alone can range from $3,000 to $5,000. So over on, I told you all that sometimes I peek in and I look at other channels. Well, one is Chantel's. She did quote that figure, $13,000, to get the eggs out of freezing and then to use them. So that's about $13,000 to $15,000. Some people will have their medication covered by insurance companies and some will not, because it's considered an elective procedure. Cold storage costs from $500 to $1,000 in annual fees. And when you're ready to use the eggs, they must be thawed and fertilized to prepare for the IVF process. Each round of IVF costs somewhere between $3,500 and $5,000. So you're looking at $20,000 to unthaw the eggs and then to get them ready for use, and then you don't even know if the entire thing is going to work. This is interesting. Alonzo.
Well, so I have a little bit of a personal experience with fertility practices, and it's very true. Often, however, one thing that wasn't completely inaccurate in the article, but may have been not intentionally, but just misleading from, kind of the lack of context, is some insurance companies will cover those in a very, very rare instance. So the cost of, like you mentioned, $20,000 for possibly getting that, child birth for freezing your eggs, is you have to weigh the costs. But there's something that you mentioned that is very true. It is an elitist thing. Your average American is not gonna fathom, dropping $10,000-$20,000 to possibly have a child. And now we also have to look at the current state of America and the cost of rearing a child, which is up to now, I think, almost $300,000. So there's a lot of factors that have to be kind of put into that. I'll stop there.
Okay. And I think that's what over on IG, that's what Salchi was getting at. There were some things that were left out of that those pieces. I don't even remember the dates of those pieces, but those are. I just dropped the links. The link to that piece is here. The automation piece is further up. Those are both in the description box, but I just wanted to say that those are things that are kind of in the environment now. And things are always changing. So before I hand the mic over to Alonzo, everyone, I'm gonna just let him run. But I just want to say, everyone, make sure you have your insurances in order. You never know. Over the holiday season, for those of you who don't know, in Buffalo, we had the bomb cyclone, we had the storm of the century, and a really close relative's house, well, their apartment burned down. And so that means all their belongings. I mean, I've never been in a home after it's been on fire, but I actually got the chance to walk through to see if anything was salvageable. I mean, not much was, but yeah, when the firefighters get in there, they're hacking away at stuff. The roof had fallen in, so I'm looking out at the sky, and there's soot, and there's burn debris everywhere, and the smell of fire and smoke is everywhere, and it was just a mess. So until you walk through something like that, you don't really appreciate what happens. And I was used to going over there and hanging out, but for the person who owned it, all their stuff was gone. So, and that's just fire. That's just a fire. Make sure your health insurance is in place. Make sure your affairs are in order in terms of passing on to the next realm. A content creator recently passed. Well, actually, 3 big ones passed away in 2022, and the last one, I was very careful about talking about what happened afterwards, but not everybody seems to plan for that those final events in your life. So I'm gonna thank Jay Charles for the super chat, Alonzo. Then I'll give you the mic and I'll mute up. Jay Charles, thank you for the $20 super chat. He says, thank you for the great information. Thank you for stopping through. So Alonzo, what's new? What's on your mind these days in the money world?
Well, there's lots of stuff on my mind, but in mentioning that content creator and the carefulness of touching on that subject, it is very important to make sure that your affairs are in order. So this is a common topic in the life insurance realm that I get this question a lot. And the reason why is because as a consumer, you're bombarded with kind of information from here and there and new concepts. So if you don't mind, Dr. Dunbar, I'd like to kind of smooth things out and kind of just talk about term and permanent insurance really quick, so I can kind of give your viewership an idea of even what it is, right? Because
sure, Alonzo, as we talked about earlier, you are a subject matter expert. So
thank you. So let's start with term, right? Now, the basic of term life insurance is almost as literal as it sounds. It's a policy that's going to last for a certain term, very similar to like a presidential term, so X amount of years. Now, when you're looking at term, all term isn't built the same, but let's just start with the length of term, okay? So there are 1, 5, 10, 15, 20, and 30-year terms. The most common is a 20-year term. The most commonly sold is a 20-year term. And then the most common of them all are 10, 20, 30. Again, you'll have variations in between 1 year, 5 year, so on. But that's just the length of term. So that's one thing that you need to realize when you're getting a term insurance, that you're just buying the death benefit protection for a length of time. Now, all term is not created equal, because in the term of term insurance, there's several different variations. So you have things like something which is called annual renewable. So what does that mean? That's very much like your 1-year term. So what happens is, for example, let's use a 40-year-old healthy male. He gets a 1-year term policy for $500,000, and it cost him $500 for the year. However, when he turns 42 or 41, that term policy he's outlived the term because it's 1 year. So because it's annually renewable, you actually have the option to keep that term insurance policy and that coverage without having to go through another physical or medical exam. The downside to that, however, is now the cost is going to increase. So instead of it being $500 for that year, it may be now $1,000 for the same coverage for that year, and so on and so forth as every year changes. Again, it probably won't double, but for arbitrary numbers and to keep it simple, let's just say it doubles every year. Right? So year 1 it's 500, year 2 it's 1,000. By year 3 you're paying $2,000 for the same coverage that you had in year 1. Now again, that's something called annual renewable. So that basically cancels every year. I probably would not recommend an annually renewable policy to anyone, but some may, and there may be situations where you may need or benefit from just that 1-year policy. For example, in the event that you need a loan, or you attain a loan, and you say, hey, listen, if something happens to me during this year of paying back this loan, you know that you're guaranteed these dollars. So in the insurance world, no matter what type of policy it is, doing something like that is called a collateral assignment, right? So I'll get into those deeper things after. And Phil, welcome Dr. Dunbar to ask questions.
Yeah. So, so two things. So, Alonzo, you mentioned a medical exam. For folks unfamiliar with insurance, life insurance, do you normally have to get a medical exam?
Great question. So the answer to that is actually it depends. And it's going to depend on, again, the type of policy you're getting and the face amount or death benefit. So in my world, we call it face amount. Most people know it as death benefit. So that's, for lack of a better term, what you're getting, right? So if generally you're looking for a policy that is under $250,000 of a death benefit or a face amount, you usually can go and get a non-exam policy where they will not come and do a physical exam. But let's go into that physical exam because that's very important. And a lot of people are not prepared for that. So what happens is once you apply for the insurance, they actually do something called a paramed exam. So a paramed exam is where they send a licensed nurse practitioner out to your home, or you can actually go to the facility like a Quest Diagnostics. And they're going to, depending on your age and health conditions that you've explained to the insurance agent, they will ask a certain amount of questions. They're also going to take blood, urine, possibly an oral swab, possibly an EKG or a heart monitor as well. Because again, the insurance company is at a lot of risk, right? If you give me $50 and then I'm promising you $1 million, but you die tomorrow, well, that's not a great return on investment for me, the insurance company. So does that kind of give a little clarity?
Yes. I'm going to bring Sheet up.
Okay.
So there'll be 3 of us. I want to thank Salchi for the Cash App. Giagami, thank you for the super chat. He says, for those who instruct and help us in such important matters.
Mm-hmm.
So that answers the question about a medical exam. For that insurance type you just told us about, the annual renewable, what's the advantage for that product, if
Um,
any?
Again, it would be a short term. And really, personally, I don't particularly see any advantage to it. Often, most carriers don't even offer that particular product any longer, because it really was for like a short term loan. Is really the only purpose I, at least in my professional opinion, could see for an annual renewable. My recommendation, if you're going to get a term, is to at least, at minimum, get a 10-year term, right? So you at least have a decade of with which you're covered. Anything shorter than that, it almost seems like a waste. Again, that's in my opinion, but there may be situations. I haven't come across any in my 15 years of doing financial services where someone would just need a 1-year policy, because you're gonna live more than a year for most people.
Okay. We've been joined by Sheed. What's going on, Sheed?
What's going on? Can you hear me good?
Yeah, I can hear
Yes,
you.
sir.
So,
right.
so guys, I don't have a set of questions, so we're just going to let this go.
Okay.
I have one more question for you, Alonzo. So typically when you hear about term, the opposite side of that coin is whole life. Are you going to talk to us about whole life?
Yes, I'm going to go
Okay.
into that. But before I go into whole life, there's still a gamut of different types of term policy that we can go through. So again, you have the annual renewable, and then you have guaranteed renewable, which means that at the end of your term, you can actually extend the policy, again, without that physical exam. Because a lot of people don't want to go into a physical exam. I actually had one guy who was like, well, what do they do with my blood and urine and stuff? And I was like, I don't know, because I don't collect the blood and urine. That's for the insurance company, and that's what they get. We should also look at, there are more things in underwriting. Now, these things that I'm telling you about underwriting apply across the board for all insurances, right? So whether you get a physical exam or not, there is something called the MIB, and it's not Men in Black. It's the Medical Information Bureau. And what their job is anytime you've applied for insurance, and this is why you fill out those HIPAA forms, they are going to have your medical information. So should you have applied for insurance and got declined, now every insurance company in the country is aware of that. So let's say you go to, MetLife, and MetLife declines you. So you go, okay, screw it, I'll go to New York Life. And New York Life is going to accept your application, but they're going to go to the MIB. And when the MIB says, well, Alonzo got declined for, being overweight, high blood pressure, diabetes, depression, this, that, and the third. No, we're not going to approve you, because we saw these last people didn't approve you. And you told us you didn't have any of these health conditions, maybe because you thought you would get approved and we wouldn't check. They're also going to get up to 6 years of your medical records. So it's very important when you're applying for that policy that you are very, very, very transparent with the representative, right? The representative is not asking you these health questions because they care, because trust me, they don't. 11 times out of 10, they could care less about, your health situation. However, the insurance company cares. And the reason the insurance company cares, again, because they're risk, right? Now, we also need to look at, when we're looking at term, and then I'll go into whole life and the gamut of things that there are there. One of my favorite types of term, if you're going to get a term policy, because I don't think that a term policy is beneficial for the insured, which would be you, the consumer. And why don't I think a traditional term, whether it's annual renewable or traditional term, which would be 10, 20, 30 years, is beneficial for the client? Because there's no money back, right? You get nothing back unless you die during that term. Other than that, you're literally paying for the protection of dollars. So it is the least expensive up front, But in the long run, like I said, as it becomes annual renewable or guaranteed renewable, so after your 10-year term or your 20-year term, you can actually extend it, but you get nothing back. So one thing you can look for is something called ROP term. ROP stands for return of premium. So the benefit to that, it is a little more expensive than a traditional term, very similar to, aftermarket parts on a vehicle. So return of premium term allows when you pay your policy and your term ends, your 10 years ends. Now you're done with the policy. You don't want it anymore. We'll say Dave Ramsey method. You've bought term and invested the difference. I'll talk about that concept shortly. But the money that you've spent on that term policy gets returned to you. So all of the dollars that you've actually spent, you get back, minus some money management fees and fees that the insurance company has to incur that they pass down to you, the consumer. You guys tracking me there? Okay. Now, the buy term, invest the difference motto works for some. However, when we're looking at investing, the world of social media has, and even water cooler talks when we didn't have social media, has unfortunately skewed what we think investing is. So to be honest, the minimum amount that is needed for an investment is actually $10,000, which breaks down to $834 a month. Anything less than that, and you're not actually investing. And this is actually according to government statistics, right? So the federal government doesn't see anything less than $10,000 as an investment, right? So even when you open that account with Fidelity and they're saying you're opening a brokerage account with $3,500, well, Fidelity is like anyone else. We'll gladly take your money. But the reason that $10,000 is the threshold is because anything less than that and your what's called accretions do not benefit you. You're also likely not in a position to take advantage of the tax benefits or the capital gains tax. You will likely be taxed at regular income tax. I believe capital gains tax under Obama was 20%, and now it may be back down to 15%, but I think it's still 20%. And Joe Biden is trying to increase it to almost 49%, which is ridiculous. Also, in terms of buy term and invest the difference, financial advisors are very, very slick, right? We charge you fees. So you'll hear Dave Ramsey, well, what about the fees with those whole life agents? There generally aren't fees in those policies that you're going to truly incur. Now, there are some things, some costs. There's things like cost of insurance, so on and so forth. But for the most part, there goes Sachi, earned income tax, capital gains tax, and passive income tax, right? So again, you're going to end up, if you're under that $10,000 threshold and not an accredited investor, you're going to end up paying more like an earned income tax. So it ends up almost hurting you more than helping you. And then when you're dealing with a licensed advisor, depending on your net worth, we're going to charge you what's called 2 and 20 fees, right? So that's 2% of your net worth annually. Say you buy a mutual fund from me and your net worth is $100,000. You're going to pay me $2,000 a year as long as you keep that mutual fund just because. And then 20% of your capital gains. So you earn $1,000. Before you even pay capital gains taxes, you owe me $200 off of that $1,000 you earned.
Okay, I want to stop right there. For everyone, this is the money game, and in my intro, I mentioned a friend who looked at some of my writings and said, "Who's his audience? Who would read something like this?" Well, to understand what Alonzo's talking about, there are a couple of buzzwords in there that you need to understand. He just mentioned net worth and There's the tax code, and there are all these different things that you need to understand, as this is like going to see the doctor in a way, or going to see your auto mechanic. You have to understand the vocabulary words. I want to get Sheet in here because he's been sitting. But I want to come back and ask you about whole life and how all these things compare and contrast. Sheed, do you, well, when you and Alonzo started working together, did you understand all of this, or did Alonzo kind of have to walk you through some of these things?
It's funny, kid. It was to a degree because when it come down to it, I've already had policies, and I kind of start developing the know-how to actually understand what I'm dealing with. You know, because me and Alonzo, we always have this talk about the IRAs and 401ks and stuff like that. And I was telling him that going into I think the market crash in like '08 or something when they was having that big thing. I lost probably what about it wasn't much because I didn't have nothing in that 401k at the time. Probably like 30,000 or something like that because I kind of got late into the scene of actually putting money in my 401k because I just didn't really look. I mean, I was young, didn't even think about investing in it for more or less. But when I lost about I think about $8,000-10,000, I was like, how did I lose that much money? And it got me thinking like, man, I'm gonna be investing in this and I can run the risk of losing so much money, and they tried to make it sound soft and saying, well, majority of that money came from the company too, that they were matching or, giving a percentage. So I'm like, but still that's my money. Once the company relinquished that money to the 401k, that's still my money. And I started looking at life insurance, got into because I always say this about my great grandmother. She always said that it don't want to be a burden to no one. So having insurance, it sets the stage of you not worrying about nobody burying you when the situation happens. So it got to that point where I started looking and researching and seeing what's the best policy for me. And I started looking at, I just always thought it was just term and whole life. I didn't know about universal life. And then I started looking into universal life, got into the index, and I seen how when you have an index, it's just like with the S&P, you put your money in there, everything's good. When the stock market, tends to fall, you don't lose money. And that was one of the biggest things I got from there where I said, man, let me do more research on it and start looking better into this life insurance. Like with Alonzo, we spoke on this and ended up getting a policy for my twin boys. And we were looking at getting the term or looking at getting what policy will fit them. And the thing of it was, same as me, getting a universal life and let it grow with them till they become adults. And down the line, they can, pull money out if needed, but also have that policy there for something to happen to them. And they end up having families, you know, there you go. They can always get more policies, increase or do whatever, but they've already had that umbrella being taken care of. And so, no, that's why I dealt with Alonzo. So me and him talk about things all the time and kind of connect on this because I've done my homework on it. So that kind of, let me know what he was talking about. So when I gave him the call and we set up to, do the policy, that's why I was already from day one, like, okay, let's go. He wanted to say, well, I'll call you back and, see what you want to do. What's your next option? I'm like, I'm ready to go now. Let's do the paperwork. I've already had the discussion. I already know your credentials. I know how you work. So let's go ahead and start the policy now. So, oh, okay, let's go then. I say what I need to do. I know I had to sign paperwork as far as the e-sign and, send what needs to be sent as far as banking information. Let's get the ball rolling. So that's the thing, any little thing I try to do as far as with money or anything business, I try to do a little research so I kind of have a, learning curve. And, it's always best to, seek professionals or somebody that's been doing it, seeking mentors. But if you don't have a mentor, it's always good to, self-talk. So that's one of the things I looked at as far as that.
So, Sheed, were you before you became a father, were you naturally curious about this, or was this a part of your family planning?
Yeah, I mean, I was naturally curious about this. When I turned like I say early 20s, I was already seeking getting life insurance because, like I told you, me being in high school, my great grandmother already talked about us having life insurance. She said, "You should get life insurance. You shouldn't be a burden to nobody." And I've had life insurance when I was younger as a kid, but my thing was to have my own life insurance, when I get older. But one of the main things that really got me to getting some like multiple policies was my dad. He was in the military, and I seen how when my father was in the military, you know, he had set up things to where when he passed, the military already provide, care for the family up until the child turns 18 in school and stuff. And it was three of us. And so my dad had it to where, the military basically paid my grandmother for raising, well, not just paying her for raising us, but that was the money set aside through that situation. So when it came down to it, I didn't go to the military. So I was saying, well, what can I do to actually take care of my family when I was, starting a family that I can do like my father did? Because there's a lot of things that he set in play that I kind of mimic myself on trying to, do better in life with too. And one of those things was, take care of my family after death. And so I started looking more into life insurance and I got into that aspect from there, you know, of taking care of my family. And then, like I said, it was already in it from my great grandma telling me about, getting life insurance not being a burden. But then I also looked at life insurance and helping the next generation. So even if I'm not here, that money will still be available. Because, in the space we talk about the man being a protector and a provider, but once that protector and the provider is not in the household, does life still maintain? Does life still go on? So that was one of the key things would encourage me to get multiple policies instead of just getting one policy. And me learning about the different policies actually pushed me into getting those multiple policies as well.
I think it's fascinating, and we're going to go back to Alonzo shortly. I think it's fascinating that your great grandmother was talking to you about that. Hey, the house you come from, I mean, it's not going to determine the ultimate outcome of your life, but that start you get, it matters.
Yeah.
Because some kids don't even hear about life insurance until they're in their late 20s or their 30s or their 40s, and they don't even start to comprehend it until, in their 40s. So you had an understanding of it at an early age.
Yeah. And
Um,
that even
Go ahead.
I was gonna say real quick, that even goes into finance. Like with me, I didn't learn as much as far as credit cards and I learned about saving and I learned about paying bills, in my household. But I had an aunt, she went to school for business and communication. She taught all her kids. Like I always brag about my cousin. This guy hasn't worked in about 5 years, but he literally had enough money saved up and he pretty much managed his money well to where he hasn't worked right now. Like he still have money in his savings to where he said, well, if I want to get up and work, I can. And I was like, man, honestly, I can't do it. I mean, I can give myself a couple of months, but 5 years, I was like, and that's like I said, it's in the household. Like you were saying, just coming from the training, in the house where you're being taught certain things. Because as far as life insurance, everybody in our family pretty much has life insurance. The younger generation are coming off of it simply because, everybody's not forcing it like she was. Because my great grandmother pretty much forced it on all us, my grandmother. So pretty much all my brothers have it. I think one of my brothers, his policy lapsed, but he's getting it back. But other than that, it was like breathing. Everybody knew when they got to the age of adulthood, if you didn't have a policy growing up as a kid, or you did have one, get another policy. You know.
Okay. We're going to go back to Alonzo, but I think before we do, I'm going to say that the last content creator that passed away, and again, I was intentionally very respectful about talking about that and speculating about um, his arrangements when he passed away. But I think a testament to how many folks are interested in this or how many folks have made preparations is when you see GoFundMe's pop up. whenever I see a GoFundMe and someone passed away, I immediately think, okay, that person didn't have insurance or they didn't prepare for that. So, Alonzo, so back to the insurances. I'd asked you about whole life. I don't know where we left that.
Right. So we were at whole life.
Okay.
And I'll definitely do the breakdown on whole life. Before I go there, though, I do want to address the GoFundMe situation, because there are a multitude of factors that go into that. One is, again, due to things like the physical exam, sometimes you don't even qualify. So you may want to be able to leave a legacy, and then the insurance company says, yeah, no. And so, unfortunately, a lot of people get left in those situations, either because of due to current health, or sometimes past health. For example, if you had cancer years ago, they're likely not going to approve you for a policy, because the likelihood of cancer coming back, they don't want to take that risk. So they're like, yeah, sorry, we know it's in remission, but we don't know if it's going to come back. So due to that, we are not going to even offer you the coverage. But so those are actually some of the reasons why, like, Sheed's situation is very important, and getting insurance while you're young is very important as well. So just for clarity, it's legal to get insurance on someone as soon as they are 15 days old. Okay, I saw your eyes light up there. Yes, 15 days old. And another statistic, the wealthy insure one life 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times, because each policy may be for a different purpose. So now, as we go into whole life, again, all whole life is not created equal. Now, when it comes to whole life, I am not a fan of traditional whole life insurance, right? I prefer permanent life insurance. We'll talk about some of the distinctions momentarily, but let's look at whole life and what that is. So number one, basically what whole life is a life insurance policy that you are locked into the premium rate for life until you either cancel and cancel the policy, lapse the policy, or you die. And so there will never be a premium increase on a whole life policy. Okay, it's locked in for life. Now, when you're looking at whole life, again, all whole life is not created equal. So you'll have, and actually back to term, there is something called term to permanent, which is a juvenile whole life policy. So you can get a term policy like the Gerber policy, right? You see the Gerber grow up plan. So that is technically term to permanent. So it's term on the child until they are of that age where they say you can increase the policy, and they can, I think it's 18. I used to sell Gerber, but I don't anymore. So I've kind of forgotten the inner workings of that particular policy, but it's term to permanent. Now, when we're looking at whole life, again, it's not all created equal, because the first type of whole life you have is actually something called final expense, which is a whole life. But I am not a fan of final expense whole life. I'll give you an actual story that's going on in my family with my grandmother. So 11 years ago, she purchased a whole life policy from a company called Colonial Penn. You know, the TV commercial, you call up, Alex Trebek, I need $9.95. Yes, there are investors who purchase pools of insurance as well. But what you're looking at when you're getting those policies is it's a small death benefit, usually a maximum of maybe $35,000. Some companies you might be able, I know with AARP and New York Life, you can get up to $50,000. But I don't know why New York Life does that. Almost no other company goes above $35,000 with a final expense. And even though whole life does build, it's basically a compulsory savings account, because the part of the money you pay goes to your paying for the death benefit, which is what they call cost of insurance. But part of the premium that you pay goes into a separate account. Now, what is that separate account, and how do insurance companies gain their money to give you this cash value? Well, insurance companies invest heavily in the bond market. And so when they get their returns from the bond market, that's how they're able to offer you the cash value on your life insurance. Now, in recent years, you guys may have heard lawmakers speaking of an IRC, Internal Revenue Code 7702. This is something that changed the interest rates. So interest rates years ago, we were promising our clients a up to, depending on the carrier, 4% return, because we were investing in the bond market and we were getting higher returns. So we would translate that to the client. However, as interest rates have become very volatile, things have changed. So now Joe Biden has made it so now all insurance companies, is across the board, all 700 insurance carriers in the country. All right, it might be 592 at this point because some have closed down. But all insurance carriers in the country now have had to increase the cost of insurance for you, the client. Now, that has nothing to do with their contracts that are in force, because those are legally binding contracts, so they can't change anything. But contracts going forward now have a lower interest rate at 3%. I usually sell, I underpromise and overdeliver. So I always tell people, and you guys have heard me say this one, 2%, right? And I'll say, would you rather 50 cents a year or $2 a month, right? And that's because I like to underpromise and overdeliver. So when I tell you, 2%, and you're actually getting 3%, you're probably happy with me. You're like, hey, I got an extra percent. Nobody's ever mad about getting extra percentage points, right? So again, with my grandmother, she purchased this policy, and these were, they called them industrial policies years ago. They prey on lower income individuals. And what it is my grandmother is paying $55 a month for this death benefit, which is a $5,000 death benefit. But at $500 or $600 a year over the course of the last 11 years, she paid $6,600. But when she dies, we're only going to get $5,000. So you have to be cognizant of what you're getting. Now, those policies are what's called guaranteed issue. So what that means is you can pretty much have almost any health condition, and you'll get that policy. Now, the caveat to those is you have to be, depending on the state, and my main state is New York, and as New York goes, almost the rest of the country goes. However, in the state of New York, it's 50 to 75. If you're under 50 or over 75, you can't get this type of policy. In other states, it's between 45 and 85, where you can still get what's called final expense. And it's literally just what most people who are lower income will say, hey, I just want enough to make sure that I'm not a burden when I die and I can pay for my funeral. So most people are getting a small, $20,000 policy, and that pays hopefully for their funeral. And that is a final expense whole life, but it does not really help you in your accumulation of wealth. So then you have a traditional whole life policy. A traditional whole life policy, again, you're going to go through all the same underwriting requirements, but again, it's that level death benefit and that level premium. I should also mention in term they have decreasing death benefit, which would be like a mortgage protection. So if you get a 30-year decreasing death benefit, you pay the same amount, but your death benefit goes down, and then at the term you have zero, right? And that's just because it's usually there to protect the mortgage. But back to whole life. So traditional whole life, again, you're paying a premium. Part of that premium goes to the cost of insurance. Part of that premium goes to the cash value accumulation. So this is where you'll hear people say you can borrow against your policy. One thing I'd like people to take away when you go to your financial advisor or insurance professional, please ask them. Lower income is generally, I think of anybody who's not an accredited investor as lower income, but generally under 50,000 is what I'm assuming is lower income. I was just answering Salchi's question. So, when you're looking at those types of policies, they do build cash value. They're a level death benefit, and you're paying your entire life. So the benefit is the price never goes up. You do build cash value. And now here's two things, because I see a lot of advisors who will talk about the ability to borrow against your policy, and that's great. But I've noticed that what they do to the public is not explain fully or give you full context. So when you're looking at what they call the cash accumulation value, you need to ask your advisor two questions. What is my account value, which means what I have to borrow against? And then what is my net surrender value, which means if I cancel this policy, how much money are you sending me back? So let's use just a quick scenario, because in terms of cash value accumulation, you have to think in terms of decades, not days. So usually for the first 5 years, depending on how the policy is set up, you're not going to have any cash value available to borrow against. You're definitely not going to have any cash to, for lack of a better term, cash out on, because there's no surrender value. So make sure you ask your advisors, what is my cash accumulation value versus what is my cash surrender value? Go ahead, Doc.
So Alonzo, I think this is a good point to pause. So the term, it's for a fixed amount of time, right? And you basically pay for that amount of time, and then you have to pay to keep going, or to buy a new term. The whole life is you. Go ahead.
With term, you can definitely keep the policy going, but it's going to cost you substantially more. And what happens is that's when it automatically switches to annual renewable. So let's use that 40-year-old guy who gets a 20. Let's say he gets a 10-year term, and then he's 50 and the term is up, but he wants to keep it. Well, from 50 to 51, it's probably going to cost him at age 50 what he paid for the entire last 10 years just for year 50, right? And then age 51, the price goes up if he decides to keep it. And then year 52 or age 52, the price goes up again. So that it automatically converts to an annual renewable if you keep the term.
Okay, so the whole life, you're paying a premium every year, and it sounds like the money's accumulating, kind of like equity in a home.
Yes. Exactly like that.
Okay. So for the people, go. She I'm going to give it to you in a second. So for the people, if you heard my intro and my friend said, who's going to care about this? Who is your audience? I mean, you only learn about this stuff by reading about it or by listening in on conversations like this. Sheed, go ahead.
And I was going to say, just like Alonzo was probably going to tell you, that rate is locked in just like a mortgage. You're paying every year on it. And like he was saying, what term is varies. So once you pay out your term, every year is going to increase. So, to the point, a lot of people tend to deal with term because of the low rate. But if you lock in on a whole life early, you can keep that rate to, 30, 40, 50 years. And Alonzo, he probably can tell you better than me. After, because with me, I have a policy, it's telling me about, 30 years, I can go ahead and retire in the policy. Let's say I have this policy, and he's going to probably go into this too about borrowing money off the policy. I can borrow, like if I have $1 million policy, and I seen this guy did it, me and Alonzo talked about this video where a guy sent, he had took $100,000 to do a stock option and out of his policy for $1 million. If he lost that money in the stock, then when he dies, the policy only pays out $900. But because he took that $100,000 out of the policy and went and got a stock option for $100,000, he tripled that money. he was able to, put that back in and had 200,000, in his pocket, stuff like that. Over time, tricks of the trade, and just like what Alonzo was just saying earlier, and I want to say on that, a lot of people want instant. So if I give my advisor, $20,000, and I start making payments on my policy within the first 2 to 3 years, I want to be able to pull money out. That policy hasn't matured yet, and most of them, they'll tell you at least about 10 years is pretty much around the time it'll be comfortable for you to take money out. I mean, I get my statements, and the first, I think, year or two I had the policy, they was telling me my cash value, I was, paying all this money into it, and they was like, I was only able to borrow, I think, $800 out, and I was like, well, that's not enough money to borrow out of the policy. So 10 years is pretty much the time where they tell you when the policy matures that way.
Okay, She, you want to, if you feel comfortable, for your sons, I imagine you got them the whole life, right? No.
I got them the universal life. Alonzo, he'll go in more detail about the universal life.
Okay,
but,
all right.
Yeah.
Alonzo, do you want to tell us about universal life?
So that's going to be the next one that we're going to get into. So again, that's why I prefer permanent life insurance over whole life insurance. So when you're looking at permanent life insurance, it's, for lack of a better term, it's still whole, but this is the reason that we call it permanent. So again, there's multiple variations. So She's sons actually don't have universal life insurance. They have indexed universal life insurance. So before I get to indexed universal, let's look at universal life insurance and what that is and how it differs from traditional whole life. So again, traditional whole life, you're level with your death benefit. Let's say you're 40, you buy $100,000 policy, you pay $100 a month. You're locked in. That's it. That's all. No more, no less. Right? You're building a little bit of cash value. Now, the next step would be universal life insurance. So what is the difference between universal and traditional whole life? So universal life insurance has more options. That's why I try to compare life insurance to Mercedes-Benz classes. So your term insurance would be a Mercedes A class. Least bells and whistles, but it's the cheapest, but you still got a Benz, right? A C class would be traditional whole life. You've got a regular life insurance policy, but you got your regular Benz, but nothing extremely special. Now, before I get into universal, we need to talk about what I like and why people come with buy term and invested difference and prefer term, because I don't think that anyone should be paying for life insurance for their whole life. So with traditional whole life, you actually have something called limited pay, which is still a traditional whole life, but you're limited in the length of time and with which you pay. So very similar to a term policy, you can pay it over the course of 10, 20, 30 years, and then you stop paying. But the benefit is the cash value still accumulates and you keep the death benefit. So that is called a limited pay. Now let's go into universal life. So universal life, you have that option of limited pay. So I can set it up so you're paying for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Obviously, when you limit the amount of time you're paying into it, the upfront cost is a little more, but the long-term cost decreases because it's a long game, right? Money is a long game, not a short-term game, right? So it's not for the quick come up. It's for 10, 20, 30 years down the line, right? If I'm 20, I'm thinking about when I'm 50, right? I'm still going to look like this at 50. I look at Shamar Moore, right? So you want to look at the long game. So with universal life, there are a little more bells and whistles. One of those bells and whistles is you have something called flexibility of premium. So same scenario, you get $100,000 policy, you're paying $100 a month. So let's say $50 of that $100 goes to your cash value, and $50 of that goes to the cost of insurance. So now you have flexibility of premium. What does that mean? That doesn't mean you just get to dictate how much you pay into it, but let's say you have a good couple of months, and instead of only paying $100 a month, you want to put $300 into there. Of course, there are certain IRS guidelines and limits that you have to adhere to. Your advisor will do that math, but for arbitrary numbers, let's just say you want to put $300, right? So now the $100, which would normally be in that universal life and building cash value, or instead of 50, there's $250 going towards your cash value, expediting the cash value acceleration or growth. Are you guys tracking me there? Okay. Now, the other benefit to universal life is you also have flexibility of death benefit. So what does that mean? You'll hear a lot of advisors, Sue Zorman, Dave Ramsey. Well, the reason we don't like whole life insurance is, and this is the reason I don't like whole life insurance, because the insurance company has initially an aleatory contract. So they are supposed to adhere to giving you, your family, that $100,000. But let's use the scenario. You get a policy, you live for 20 years, you build 50 grand cash value, and then get hit by a bus. Well, the insurance company has $50,000 of your money, and then they just take $50,000 of their money. And because the contract says they only owe your family $100,000, they give your family $100,000 and they fulfill their contract. Now, with universal life, if set up properly, you have the option of what's called an increasing death benefit. So what happens is your cash value actually increases your death benefit. So let's use that scenario. You're buying a $100,000 policy. You live for 20 years. $50,000 of cash value is built in the policy, and you get hit by a bus and die. The insurance company now has to take that $50,000 of your money plus the $100,000 that they are contractually obligated, and now they have to give your beneficiaries $150,000. You guys tracking me there? Okay. Now we can talk about the S-Class of Mercedes-Benzes, or the Maybach, if you really want to call it that, which is what she likes, and I love too, which is indexed universal life insurance.
So hold on, Alonzo. So everyone, that's an important vocabulary word there. Indexed, that means it's invested in something, right?
So no, it is not
Okay.
participating in the market.
Okay.
It is mirroring the
It's
S&P
mirroring the
market.
market. It's mirroring.
Right.
I
So
was thinking index fund.
Yes, it's very similar. Very similar. Okay. However, unlike an index fund, right? If you get an ETF, right, and the S&P goes up, your money goes up. But what happens when the S&P goes down? Your money goes down. So with an indexed universal life insurance policy, S&P goes up, your money goes up. Now, there are certain limits, right? Right now, I believe that one of my favorite carriers is at 6.7% monthly compound interest, right? So you do have a ceiling, but you also have a floor, right? So let's say S&P goes up, your money goes up in your life insurance or your cash value, but then the market goes crash. Well, you level off. You just gain zero, but you lose zero as well, right? So you level off. And then when the S&P starts going back up, you start going back up. Now, you can also tie it to a multitude of indices. The S&P is not the only indice that you can actually tie this to. You can tie it to the Russell 2000. You can tie it to the Morgan Stanley International, the PNB, what is it? The Barclays. I can't even think of the index right now. I'm sorry. But so there's a multitude of indices that you can actually attach this to. The safest and probably the most advantageous is the S&P 500. Okay. So that's kind of the beauty of an indexed universal life, is that it grows at a much more accelerated rate than all of the others. Now, you have to be very careful with indexed universal life insurance because a lot of agents are unaware of how to set those up. And you'll hear terms like infinite banking or be your own bank or private banking. Be very, very, very wary if somebody's just throwing infinite banking at you. It's one of my favorite concepts. However, it doesn't always work with everyone. Reason being, generally, if you're above 25, for infinite banking to actually work, you need to fund these policies with at least $1,000 a month, which definitely cuts off most people, because most people aren't fathoming spending $1,000 a month on a life insurance policy. Now, the other thing is, when you're buying an index universal life insurance policy, you're not buying it for the purpose of a death benefit. You're buying it for the purpose of cash value accumulation, which is why the wealthy insure one life at least 7 times. Are you guys tracking me there?
So is this the vehicle that they use for that?
For infinite banking?
Yeah.
So you can actually use traditional whole life or indexed universal life. The most advantageous is indexed universal life for infinite banking.
Yeah, because it grows.
Okay.
Right?
Exactly, because it grows.
Okay,
Yeah,
we're at hold on, so we're at an hour and 20 minutes. Do you want to say anything about what Alonzo just talked to us about?
Well, yeah, because basically, like I was saying, when I got to the point of looking at the system and how things was working, that was one of the biggest things with me when I told you about when they were talking about earlier about mirroring the S&P and how you make more money. And that was the biggest thing when they told me, well, if you live to be at least 78 at the current market, you have over like 3.4 million or 4 point some million. But the more money you put in, the more it increases. And that percent compounding interest, I think mine, it's pretty much up there where Alonzo was talking about. But with
Your
that
carrier is
compound
actually
interest,
higher, Sheed. You got it at an earlier time, and the carrier that
yeah,
you have it with is I actually represent that company as well. You have it with one of the 3 highest carriers. I actually represent all of the carriers that have those 3 high interest rates. One being Lincoln Financial Group, the other being Emeritus, and the third being Mass Mutual.
yeah, I was trying to be modest about it, but yeah, but the thing is, when it comes down to that, you know, having that set aside, you already know to where if I put more money in, this is gonna benefit me. So I can take my tax return. I'm gonna do something crazy like buy some rims for my car. Why not invest in the future? I get a little extra money. Why not invest in the future? Because I get my statements, yearly, and I can go set up a portal and go and just look at it, monthly, weekly if I want to. But the whole thing is getting it to that point. I know what I'm looking forward to when I want to take money out or when I want to invest. I'm looking at that. When Alonzo was talking about that, 7 policies, that got me thinking about my family members, a lot of the elderly in my family, about getting policies on them. Because, when I was young, my thing was, buying policies on people. It's like giving them a death sentence. And, my grandma talked me out of that. Alonzo talked me out of that because I still had that kind of fear too. But when Alonzo came to me with that, and he was telling me, that, certain people will buy 7 policies. And I was looking at it like, yeah, that's a good thing. Erica Williams talks about that. She said that one group of kids, they end up buying, I think it was like 10 kids bought a policy for their grandmother, and all of them were putting in $100. It's like $1,000 a month. It was a big policy, and it paid out. According to, let's say they put $1,000 in and got $1 million policy. Every kid got $100,000 off that policy. So if you have 7 of those policies, hey, that's 700,000 for every one of them. And of course, you're gonna say, man, that's $700 a month, but you're getting $700,000 back on the return. And then don't let it be something. I mean, I quite with those index being older she is, that policy will be way up there even more. $1,000 a month wouldn't even be coming close to that. I mean, Alonzo can contest it. It would be like close to what, 5,000 a month, because with those policies, the way they build that interest, the way they build that money on their compounding, you have to put out so much more. I mean, I know a guy, he pays about, I think, 2,500 a month on his policy. And he said he's gonna do that for the next 10 years. And then, as he's starting to slow down and want to invest, then he's gonna have that money, and that's the only reason he's doing it, to have that compounding like that for the 10 years that he knows he's gonna get more money out of him. You know, he set the policy up to where he pay $1,000 a month. He's putting in 25. So pretty much in the end, when he's ready to invest or grab some money out, he's already know the money's gonna be there. He's, you know, doing more with the money, so he's already have a game plan for it. And you know
Yeah.
what Alonzo said, that a lot of people are buying this insurance for death. They have death insurance, you know, they have other insurance that me and Alonzo are talking about with personal care, you know, going to elderly home, but you're taking this money to invest. You know, you're not taking the money to sit here and say, when I die, I'm gonna have $1 million for my funeral. No, you're taking this policy, say, before I die, I'm gonna have $1 million to go buy more property, to, you know, like I say, create that generational wealth, or you just being a good business, you know, being a business real well. You have the money and the profit there.
So everyone, so a couple things I want to interject here. So just the power of what we're talking about. When I was young, when she was learning about insurance, I was thinking about basketball. I was thinking about girls. I was thinking about the fact that I didn't have any J's. I was thinking about going to work at McDonald's. I was thinking about school. I was thinking about college. But other than that, my mind was on a lot of, I mean, things teens think about and people in their early 20s think about. But I'm just thinking, if I had this type of knowledge in my teens and my 20s, you know, so that's a huge advantage that she'd had. The other thing, I'm going to ask you guys before the stream is over to shout out your channels. I'm certainly going to listen to this again. Alonzo, do you do virtual consultations? And the reason I ask is because when I was home in Buffalo for the holidays, my mother works at her church, and a lot of people come to the church for funerals, and they're not prepared, so they expect the church to pay for everything. And this most recent time, I think this one family, um, I think the pastor actually did the service out of goodwill, but my mother said there were no roses there was no nothing. So these people didn't plan anything ahead of time. And I mentioned you, but do you do for the lay person, the people out there watching, do you do a virtual consultation for groups?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So not only that, but I actually recently, and I don't know if I mentioned this in the space, so I've moved from just a regular advisor to a managing associate here at CG Wealth. So I have about 5 representatives who work under me, and they're spread across the country. I have 2 on the West Coast and 2 in the Midwest, and then 1 here in New York as well. So we're all the way across. I'm licensed in 11 states. My firm is licensed in 24 states. And because we're licensed in New York, we have the trump card. So if you're in a state we're not licensed in, we pretty much just go there and say, hey, I got my license in New York. How much is it for the license here? We don't have to really go through the testing or anything, because as New York goes, the rest of the country goes. So that there. And I'm actually glad, Salchi, you must be reading my mind. Because I was about to mention that life insurance can be used as collateral. You actually heard me mention it earlier, something called a collateral assignment. So if you have a permanent life insurance policy, I wish I would have my my client, and you guys may know him from these spaces, a gentleman by the name of Marty McFly. He actually has a policy with me, and he actually put this to practice. So he had a situation where there's a property that he's interested in buying, and he contacted me as his financial advisor and was like, hey, I'm trying to figure out, how I can go get this money. Should I just take a HELOC from my current property or my investment property? I was like, no, just take your life insurance to the mortgage broker and tell her you want to use that as collateral. The next day he texted me, he was like, yo, dude, she said I can actually do this. Why aren't they telling us this? And I was like, well, they don't want you to know that. But life insurance adds to your net worth if it's a permanent policy. So the cash value does as well.
Well, Alonzo, and that Dr. Michael Eric Dyson drop that I played, that's one of the points he was making, and that's that in some of our families, we got people going in and out of jail. We got this emergency, that emergency. So if it could be a policy could be used as collateral. I mean, having those things in place would make a big deal for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
Definitely. Yeah, the collateral assignment is an awesome thing. And I'll tell you, the property that he's interested in is above $200,000. Right? Just, I'm not going to give the exact figure, but it's above $200,000. And he's going to be able to buy that based on being able to qualify for a loan through his life insurance policy being used as collateral with the mortgage company, as opposed to even having to prove your ability to pay back a loan. I should also mention that certain life insurance policies, depending on the carrier, are what is called participating. So a participating policy, which most people are unaware of, means that your life insurance policy actually pays dividends. And life insurance companies are the only companies that have paid dividends since like 1886, and every year have paid a dividend. So they've never not been profitable. Now, when we're looking at doing or getting your dividend, most licensed agents have no clue of how to give you your dividend, or that's even an option. Most agents will set up your dividend payment to be beneficial to the insurance carrier, which they will give you something called PUA, not pickup artist, but paid up addition. And what that is let's say you get $1,000 dividend. They'll say, okay, we got $1,000 here. Whatever $1,000 gets you at this point in more life insurance, we're going to just buy that for you. So the insurance company just kind of keeps that money. You do have the option, however, of actually being paid out that dividend. You can also, as opposed to borrowing against your insurance policy, you can actually have it cash flow out to you. So let's say you pay into a permanent life insurance, and this is usually a universal and an index universal. Let's say you pay $6,000 a year, the same that you would fund an IRA with. And you pay $6,000 a year for 20 years, and then you decide that you want to stop paying, but you want to receive, let's say, $8,000 a year from the insurance policy for 20 years. You can actually have it set up so that the insurance policy, from what you've paid into it, is now paying you that $8,000 a year, essentially $1,500 more or $2,000 more per year than you actually paid into it. Again, you have to have an advisor that's even aware that that's an option for you.
Okay.
I want to say,
let me read this first. Giagami says, not a church person, but it would indeed be beneficial to use the church or other points of social gatherings to teach such lessons. Well, quite a few people still gather at places of worship, and in a lot of our communities, that's where people run. When disaster strikes, such as a death, and they're not prepared for it, that's where they run. So yeah, I agree, Gigami. I mean, churches are also used as political tools. I talked about that when I was at home. Politicians know to go there to get their messages out to the masses. So anyway, go ahead.
I was gonna tell Alonzo to elaborate on the capital gains tax, having insurance and buying houses and stuff. Go ahead.
Yeah. So guys, we're at 1 hour and 30 minutes. I want to be respectful of your time, and I want to get an early start on dinner in the cigar lounge tonight. So
football game.
Say what? And then some games on. So
on.
let's rock for another 30 minutes.
Okay.
And then maybe whatever we don't cover, we can cover on a follow-up. And then definitely I want you to shout your channels out so people can go right to the source.
Definitely.
So yeah, we'll go for another 30 minutes.
Cool.
So she'd want to know about the capital gains.
So yeah, in terms of that's the beauty. So the growth in your insurance policies is tax-free, right? So there are some laws, and if you don't mind, give me 1 second. I want to put those laws into the chat. So you have one called TEFRA, you have one called DEFRA, and you have one called TAMRA. Okay. And the reason that those laws actually came into play was because these are kind of how wealthy people like Donald Trump only pay $750 in taxes. Life insurance is a tax shelter. Don't believe me. I want you guys to go, and I'm going to put this in the chat as well. There's a CPA by the name of Ed Slott. Okay. He's a certified public accountant. He does not sell life insurance, but he loves life insurance above most investment products because you can't call insurance an investment. And the beauty is because there's a guarantee that you won't lose money. And there's also a guarantee that you won't get taxed on it. So I love that more than an investment, because an investment, there's no guarantee that I'll earn. There's also no guarantee that I'll lose. There's potential to gain. And trust me, I love investments because you don't have to qualify, right? As long as you've got $500,000, I just take it, I put it in the investment vehicle, and that's it. He has that Slott's book. Salchi, I want you to check out a book by the guy, and everyone, I want you to check out a book by a guy by the name of David McKnight. And so when we're talking about capital gains, he has a book called The Power of Zero. He has a few books. He also has one called Look Before You Lerp, which she is very aware about when he was talking about 401ks and IRAs. A LERP is something called a life insurance retirement plan. Okay, so a lot of wealthy individuals have already set a lot of these things up. So TAMRA was created because, again, insurance what used to happen in the early 80s, wealthy individuals were not going into the stock market. They were going into life insurance. Life insurance was growing at about 12% at the time. That's why. And they would just stuff money in there tax-free, right? So you put in $100,000, right? And you're growing $12,000 a month tax-free. Who doesn't want that, right? And so what the IRS said was, oh, no. We want our hands in this. So now if you put money in there towards what's called a MEC, modified endowment contract, right? They have MEC limits, which turns your life insurance policy into an IRA. And then it gets the tax treatment of an IRA. So you have to be very careful. Again, that's why I said with infinite banking, you have to be extremely careful, because these are large premiums and these insurance agents get a lot of money. Okay. I'll tell you right now, I actually have probably a lower contract than what's called street level. Street level commission is 90%, meaning depending on how much you pay, if you pay $1,000 a year, the insurance agent gets $900 off of that. You don't pay that to them. The insurance company does. But you want to make sure that they're setting the policy up for you very beneficial. Now, I'm at a 50% contract level. There's reasons for that. Also because now I'm a managing associate, so I lowered my commission so I can pay my agents, right? But again, you pay $1,000, I get $500, right? Now, when you're doing an infinite banking strategy, you're going to, and this is why a lot of agents dislike it. There it is, the power of zero. Yes. You're again, agents, and this is none of the consumer's concern, but it is your concern. Legally, you can ask that advisor how they get paid. And it's very important as takeaways that you ask a couple of questions. Can I give those takeaways before I keep going? Okay. So takeaway number one, whenever you ask a financial professional about life insurance, if you come to me and you say, hey, Alonzo, how much is $1 million of life insurance for me? I'm 46. My first question is going to be, how'd you get that number? If the representative just goes, oh, okay, here, yeah, let's get you a quote, and they don't try to get you an appointment. First of all, it's not a quote when you're talking about life insurance. It's an illustration, because they're illustrating a hypothetical contract. It would be very similar to if you're in crypto, getting the white papers, or if you're doing a hedge fund, you're getting the red herring, or if you're doing an investment, getting something called a prospectus. Again, as a financial advisor, I'm familiar with this. Most insurance agents may not be, okay? But when you're looking at investments, they have something called a prospectus. So you want to actually sit with your advisor and find out, hey, What is it that yeah, how much is $1 million? Well, you want them to find out how you got to that number, right? Because again, like I said, generational wealth, $1 million is only $50,000 a year for 20 years. And one generation is 20 years. So we are often completely underinsured. Now, an advisor like myself would say, if you really want to leave generational wealth, okay, you get a $10 million policy. When you pass, you send your family to me. Then we put that money into a money market account like Marcus Millichap, which is Goldman Sachs, which is getting 0.5% interest. 0.5% of 10 million is 50,000 in perpetuity, right? And actually, I may be incorrect. The interest rates might have gone up to 1% now. Salchi is probably more familiar with that because he deals with that. Well, he deals with institutional investors, but he's dealing with that on a more regular basis than I am. But that's one takeaway, right? You definitely want to find out that. Number two, ask them, no matter what advisor, how are you paid? Some advisors are fee only, right? Which means that, very similar to myself, and that's why I'm if you'll see in my videos, I'm saying get a consult at my expense, because I charge a fee for my consults now, right? Most advisors charge a fee for their consults. Now, I am fee and commission based. What does that mean? That means I do charge a fee, and then based on if you place business with me, I get paid a commission from the company. And then some representatives, like the majority of the representatives who work under me, are commission only, meaning they do not charge you a fee for their consult. However, if you decide to place business with them, they will go ahead and get the commission from the company. You need to make sure that you find out what kind of advisor you're working with. Nothing wrong with any of them, but this will put you in the range of understanding, what you're getting with. And I've found that most of my clients prefer that I charge a fee, because now they realize, okay, well, he's got that money out the way, so at least he's got something, so he's going to advise me in my best interest, as opposed to, well, he's just waiting on this commission, so he's just going to push me in whatever's getting him the biggest check. It's the psychology of people. You guys tracking me there? Okay. I think those are very, very, very important. So make sure you write those two questions down, because you definitely want to ask that advisor, how do you get paid? That's just everywhere. Ask them how they get paid. And then if they tell you they get paid a commission, you can legally ask what percentage, right? Now, it may vary. Yeah, like Sachi says, you'll understand the agent's motivations, right? If they get paid up front, then there is no further motivation to push you in to an expensive product, because they've been paid, right? So listen, I already got paid. If you get nothing, I'm paid. If you get something, I'm paid. So I'm just going to put you in whatever's best for you, right? I think those are two very, very important takeaways. I do want to open up for questions as well. If anybody has questions, feel welcome to type them in, and you guys feel welcome to cut me off. Sheed, you had something?
Yeah, let Dr. Dunbar go.
No, go ahead, Chief.
Well, I want to talk briefly about the situation where a rapper just died, and this rapper was signed to Gucci Mane's label 1017, and just referencing the point with this. So the guy died, and he was talking about how much he's this big guy, he makes money, and he has $1,200 pair of shoes on. Besides the $50,000 chain that he got from Gucci Mane, he had 20,000, somewhat chains on. So sometime he might have went out. Just his jewelry alone was probably about 700. I would say about 75 to 100. I would say not that much, but his clothes and everything, like $800 pants. So in all, total on outfit, he's walking around with about $200,000, worth of clothes, shoes, and jewelry, watches, and stuff like that. And the guy ends up dying, overdosing, and they're pleading with his record label to pay for his funeral. And it kind of got strange, because they wanted the cash up front, which Gucci Mane himself paid the funeral home. They asked, what kind of funeral do you want, and what is the expenses? So they went, made everything the expense about $20,000. What did they want done for us with the funeral? He paid the funeral. I believe he went there, or just because he goes there all the time in that area of Memphis where he signed his artist from, and he's from Atlanta. So he had a receipt showing that he paid about 20,000. The family technically wanted the money. So that goes into also to where, this guy not even having enough money to take care of himself. He was young, I think about 20, 25 or something like that. 22. Oh, 22. So, this young guy not having insurance, let alone, let's say if this guy had kids. So now who's going to take care of his kids while he's not there? That's putting more responsibility on his family. And life insurance, it'll be great to have it at a young age, but being responsible and getting it at that point, just saying the least of that. And it kind of shook me the way that the family wanted the record label to pay for it. And I was having this talk with my cousin and friend and stuff, and like, if I worked at Walmart for 10 years and I slip and fall, at my home, could my family reach out to Walmart and ask for that money? So, it's just being more responsible about your finances and doing things. That's what actually takes the cake, preparing, preventative maintenance. Try to do stuff ahead of time so you won't have these issues. And just want to just say on that, because I mean, in the end, they were looking for another person to take care of their family member, which that's the family, mainly the mother and father's responsibility, let alone going into sister and brother and so forth, from uncles and there.
And if I can piggyback off of that, so let's actually talk about that, because there are actual things that are set up. So there's something called COLI, corporate owned life insurance. And the guy who did the movie Bowling for Columbine, actually, I believe it was either 2009 or 2011, did a movie about this. Some large corporations, including Walmart, had what we call janitors policies, or COLI, COLI, which is corporate owned life insurance. And when one representative who worked at Amity Bank, as a high level executive at Amity Bank, he died from a heart attack or cancer or something. Well, he had insurance through his job, which many of us do, but the insurance through your job is COLI, corporate owned life insurance. Well, when he died, the Amity Bank got $5 million from that $5 million life insurance policy that he thought he was signing to leave to his family. But in order to get life insurance on someone, you need to have what's called insurable interest. Well, a corporation has insurable interest in you if they hire you as an employee, because should you die, they now need to replace you. So his family got none of that $5 million. And that's something called COLI, corporate-owned life insurance. And if I may, Dr. Dunbar, can I share my screen really quick? Let me see here. Let me click this. We build this as we fly, folks. We build this as we fly.
And while he's doing that, that's the thing. What happened to a lot of the rappers, man? They got in that situation. And briefly, at my job, there was a guy. He ended up having 2 heart attacks on the job.
Oh, wow.
And, end up the third one. Our company, they talked about it to where, they had a life insurance policy out on this guy. And, they make us sign papers. And I read into that, that if anything was to happen to us, they have policies on us at this job I used to work at. So even with Alonzo might speak on that as well.
Yeah, those are the COLI policies, right? So again, what is ending up happening with a lot of people and these rappers is that the life insurance ends up, like, let's use the most recent rapper, right? His album goes double wood. The record label wants to recoup their loss. So what better way? Hey, this guy is talking about this reckless lifestyle. Oh, he happened to die in November, which happens to be around corporate tax filing season. We just happen to have $100 million life insurance policy on him. Actually, there's a rapper, French Montana, who was mentioning that. But not only is there COLI, there's also something called BOLI, right? Which is bank-owned life insurance. So if you'll notice, this says dollar amounts in thousands. So these, with these commas, as you'll see, there's no decimal point. So these are billions of dollars. So right here, this is an older document, right? You see, it was last updated in 2019. This is Bank of America, right? So let's look at line 4, equity investments without readily determinable fair values. That's the stock market. They've put $6.1 billion into the stock market. However, in many lower income communities, we just see life insurance as a death check. We don't see it as an asset. General life insurance assets, $2.9 billion. Separate account life insurance assets, $19.4 billion. Whoa, that's a pretty big number. Why are they leading everybody to the stock market, yet they're putting almost $23 billion into cash value life insurance? Now, a lot of this is because this is how they create retirement accounts and pension funds, but this is also guaranteed money, right? Whereas equity investments are not guaranteed money. Now, Bank of America is not the only bank that we have here, right? We also have Citibank. Now, Citibank, basically, they put the same amount of billions into the stock market as they did into cash value life insurance. A large reason of that is, and I'm not talking negative about the company, but a large reason of that is because they were in bed with Primerica. I'm not going to say anything further about that because I don't want to risk my license talking negatively about other insurance companies. The next one, and if you guys want, you can text 354. I don't even remember where you're supposed to text that, but you can actually receive this. There's a website actually, and I'll put that in the chat, called bwllcnl, BOLICOLI.com. bwllcnl.com, where you can actually research more of this. So let's look at a big boy bank, right? JP Morgan. So equity investments without readily determinable fair values, $6.1 billion. Well, general account life insurance, they put about the same $6.1 billion and another $5.3 billion in their separate account life insurance. Now, there's a third line you'll see here, and the big boy bank, which is the third largest mortgage lender in the country, or third largest mortgage servicer in the country, Wells Fargo. Equity investments without readily determinable fair values, $5.3 billion. General account life insurance, $5.3 billion. Separate account life insurance, $12.9 billion. Hybrid account life insurance, $600 million. Now, hybrid account life insurance is a life insurance policy that has a long-term care insurance a portion associated with it. So this is another takeaway that I'd like to give to people. When you're talking to your financial advisor or your insurance agent, when you're talking about life insurance, I want you to make sure that you ask them if the policy that you're getting into has something called living benefits. So go ahead, She.
Now, I was going to add to that about the living benefits, because you informed me of that on my policy, and I had to go look and do some research on that to where you can explain that as well. If I was to get hurt, I can pull up to, depending on the type of illness, up to 50 to 75% of my money.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So in the event of a terminal illness, meaning you're going to live 12 months or less, you can get up to 75% of your death benefit tax-free, paid directly to you. So in the event of a chronic illness, you can get up to 50% of your death benefit tax-free. What's a chronic illness? So those are when you're unable to perform at least 2 activities of daily living: eating, toiling, bathing, walking, things like that. And then in the term of a critical illness, you can get up to 25% of your death benefit tax-free. Things like end-stage renal failure, blindness due to diabetes, and things of that nature. So those are just a couple of takeaways that I'd like to see there. Now, I also saw somebody says they write off life insurance. Okay. No, I thought he was talking about writing off life insurance. I was going to say you cannot write life insurance off on your taxes unless, and this is actually excellent for people who are either self-employed or have like an LLC because they own investment properties, right? So if you have a company or a business, you can actually write off the premiums that you pay into your life insurance as long as your business pays the life insurance, right? We call that an executive benefit. So you can actually, if you're self-employed and you have a C corp, pay yourself an employee benefit, and go there. And then I would talk about things like an SEP IRA. But I don't want to get too deep in the weeds. I kind of want to stay on life insurance, not the other investment vehicles or retirement accounts as of yet. We can do that at another time because that's another deep, deep rabbit hole that will take another 2 hours.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are right at an hour and 55 minutes. I want to go back to this comment here by Psycho Candy. He says that some people write off life insurance and some people write off life insurance and these other financial instruments as being quote unquote tools of the white man. But there are some good perks if you really take the time to understand it. So, Alonzo, I want to go back to what you said earlier about our former president. I don't want to make this political, but people were infuriated by the amount of taxes that he paid and what he didn't pay. But if it's true that part of his financial strategy was using insurance, that's something that's available to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And he just knew, him and his financial team knew to use that. So
yes.
I think it's just an example of how a mob mentality can be created, and the answer is hiding right there in plain sight. You can use it too, you could do it too, but most people are not paying attention to how to use these tools. I created a video earlier this week on my car insurance going up. Alonzo, when the economy is doing what our economy is doing, does the insurance world feel that too, or is that just car insurance? Because Salchi said in the chat that his mom's car insurance went up as well.
Mm-hmm. So auto insurance, I also, ironically enough, I used to own an Allstate insurance. So I have I pretty much do all lines of insurance, life, health, financial, as well as property and casualty. So property and casualty feels the effects of the economy. Life and financial does not. Why? Because again, we've been paying dividends since the 1800s, right? So there has never not been a profitable year for a life insurance company. With auto insurance or property and casualty insurance, there have been many not profitable years, but that's due to paying claims, things like subjugation, which is they have to, they got to go after whoever, they paid out your claim for uninsured, underinsured, and now they got to go after the other guy's insurance. So a lot of frivolous lawsuits, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, for the main part, life and financial is not affected negatively by the economy. In fact, we're actually happy that the economy is tanking, because when the economy tanks, our interest rates go up. So I'll give you an example. Right now, with like the mortgage rates, I have a client who wants to put about $250,000 away into an annuity, because last year we did another annuity of about $250,000, and I was able to get him 3% compound interest, which most annuities are growing at 1%, right? Those are what you call MIGA, minimum yearly guaranteed annuity. However, I like everything to be indexed, right? So I didn't even talk about variable universal life insurance, but I don't like variable insurance. Your insurance should be insurance. Your investment should be investments. So I don't talk about variable life insurance because it doesn't make sense to me. However, in the annuities, which is an IRA, so if anybody tells you to get an IRA from a bank, go to an insurance company. You'll get much better rates. So annuities were growing at 1%. A MIGA, like I said, a minimum yearly guaranteed annuity. If you get a regular fixed annuity, they're growing at 1.5%, maybe 2% if you're lucky. When you're looking at an indexed annuity, if set up properly, you were getting 3%. As of today, right now, if I were to show you the indexed annuity that I have, it's growing at 8.8%. So it's almost like growing like a mortgage. So he was like, when can I put this $250,000 away with you, Alonzo? And I keep telling him he's got to wait a little bit because there's some what happens is when you put a certain amount of money away with a financial institution, they won't let you do it again for a certain period of time. And so I have to tell him, listen, I know you want to get, this additional 8%, but if I put you in that, I'm risking my license, and I'm not going to do that. But also the company won't let us because you have to live out the time frame. And he's coming up on that time frame, so I'm getting excited as well because trust me, I want the commission, right? It's not like I don't want the commission, but I definitely can't legally let him do it yet.
Okay. Well, we're right at 2 hours, so I think this is a good place to wrap up. I'm going to ask both you guys about your channels, but before I do, I saw the two of you over on Erica's channel over the holiday season. You guys normally go over there?
Yes.
Why? I do. That's where I found Dr. Patrick Dix. And Erica, if you see this, I'd like to interview you too at some point. Anyway, but go ahead.
I'll let you go.
Believe it or not, that's how I actually came into the space, looking at Erica, and she was, throwing out names, because my biggest thing was I was always looking at business. And, Alonzo, I even talked to him. I talk about a lot of documentaries where I look at different things regarding, finance, the way the economy is moving and stuff of that nature. And just in general, all the way down to, I sent him one where a guy goes and look at abandoned mansions and homes. And it has the story behind them. Kenny Rogers, one of his houses down here in Atlanta, sold to some people. But just in general, I was over there on her. I was always on her panel. I still go on her panel from time to time again. Well, not on the panel, but in the chat actually, because she gives a lot of good points. And doing your research and understanding what you're doing. Hey, 9 times out of 10 is mostly on the money. And even if she makes a mistake and say something, she retracts it. She gives information. I joined one of her groups to where I got courses. I took a course where learned about tax liens and stuff like that. So I've been dialed into Erica for a minute.
So I ran into Erica through, and yes, everyone should actually check out that article. That article is the correlation between slavery and life insurance. That's kind of where the phrase "buy a term, invest the difference" came from. They used to buy a term policy on a slave, and the useful life of a slave was anywhere from 7 to 10 years, and they would invest the rest on a young buck. But I ran into Erica through Kevin Samuels, and he recommended her. And so then I started following her, and I like to try and get into those algorithms, obviously for selfish reasons, because, I like to kind of talk about, my experience in financial services, and I got into financial services very similar to, what Michael Eric Dyson was saying. 2008, 3 days before Mother's Day, I got shot 5 times in front of my mother in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. That is what ignited the passion in me. And that's one of the things that I think differentiates me from a lot of other advisors.
Okay. You guys want to shout out your channels before we wrap up?
Go ahead,
All right.
Chief.
So basically, my self-explanatory, we here talk a lot about generational wealth, just getting yourself prepared, money, mentally, physically. Like I tell people, I'm, starting my resolution last year, losing weight, being more, over into my money, finance. I'm actually doing a little different thing this year because my kids get more older. So instead of them just talking to them about finance, they're gonna be into the whole bill paying thing for me, to where I'm gonna be showing them, all the bills that we pay, showing how much things. Because I was looking at a channel, Love Dorsey. She's mostly on Instagram and all that. But one of her videos, she was talking about how, you know, showing your kids your credit score, showing your kids how much you make a week will actually put your feet to the fire, but it actually let them know that, we don't have a lot of money to the stuff that you want. And with your credit report, when your child tells you, dang, mom, your credit report bad, you got a 450, so it makes you like, man, I got to do better for my kids. But also, I never really looked at it to a certain degree until it's pushed in my face. So, I more or less try to get people, to the point of understanding, you know, work with your money. The money that you have, you can work with it. But also in this gig economy, you can use apps. I always talk about using DoorDash, using Uber, if you got a vehicle. If you don't have a vehicle, use, some of these other apps, offer up Facebook Marketplace to sell items, making money. If you know how to create things, use Etsy, something like that, eBay, just to, keep making money, and when you get the money, you got to know what to do with it. I always tell people also about life insurance. Me and Alonzo had a discussion. So that's my channel is mostly centered around. Like I said, I stepped away from the gender topics more or less because, that's a dead end. It's always going to be a push and a pull, but more or less, we need to learn more. And like I said, you can be entertained all day on social media from YouTube to Facebook and Instagram and all these other platforms, but what are you gonna do once that camera gets off, or once you stop looking at it? What are you gonna actually do as far as life? You can be entertained, but what are you gonna do after life? So that's what I'm trying to put more of a focus on with that.
And my channel is actually a multitude of financial topics. So, obviously I talk about a lot about insurance. You're rarely going to see me talk about investments because as an actual advisor, there's actually laws about speaking wantonly about investments. So that's another takeaway. If people are talking about investments wantonly, you kind of want to have some pause with that because they would be risking their professional credentials to actually talk about certain products very specifically. Now, on a broad range, they can kind of talk about them, but on a very specific level, they really are not. It's illegal to talk about those investments, etc. In just the general public. So you'll also hear me speak a lot of things about real estate, as I was a licensed realtor in New York, car insurance. I also hold my PTIN, Prepares Tax Identification Number. So I'm actually licensed in all 50 states to prepare taxes. So you hear me talk about a multitude of, insurance and financial topics. Just kind of giving them, kind of opening the gates and telling you what the wealthy don't want you to know, or giving you the inside track of what we as the professionals are going to see and, kind of for you to look for. And then I guess I'll give my normal sign off before we go. So this is my only little bit of vulgar language today, Dr. Dunbar. I'm sorry, but I got to do this one. It's wipe ass, work in progress every day and see success. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, when people challenge you, they don't challenge you to challenge you, but they challenge you to challenge you. Accept the challenge. Salute.
Thank you, Alonzo. All right, everyone. This was really good. I'm gonna have to watch this again. If you didn't start from the beginning, there was so much information that Alonzo shared. I would watch this multiple times. And if you haven't subbed, go over to his channel and sub, and so you can hear this stuff all the time. Same thing with Sheet. I'm gonna do a little bit of advertising myself. I'm a writer. That's why I came to YouTube. So I have a newsletter. I'm working on a book. The newsletter is here. The link is in the description box. There's a 2-paragraph greeting. You just click this button at the bottom, enter in your email address. I'll be grateful if you did, and you're a part of the list. I'm getting my newsletter ready for this month. You'll hear about my book, my channels, my written content, and even just what's happening right now in life and reflections of the day. I just took a training this week at my job a leadership training, and we did the Myers-Briggs test, and we did all kinds of personal assessments, and it was very, very valuable to look for assessing myself and seeing what my strengths are and seeing what my weaknesses are and seeing where my interests lie. So that's what the newsletter will be about. So please consider signing up. Please like, share, and subscribe. If you want to leave a super thanks, you can do that. If you want to donate to the channel via my Cash App and PayPal, that information is, well, I'll just copy paste it. I'll copy and paste it again, because folks left me lots and lots of comments during the stream. So my Cash App and PayPal are there. And once again, you can leave a super thanks. So everyone, I'm going to take us out with Dr. Michael Eric Dyson. In my intro, I described a discussion I had with a friend a couple of years ago regarding why I was blogging about some of the things I was blogging about: net worths, matching contributions, the law of compounding interest, emergency funds, a mixture of things that we talked about today. Oh, Shonda just stopped through. Shonda says, good evening, brothers, and peace to the chat. We'll listen to the playback once I'm catching the end. Okay, thank you, Shonda. I really appreciate that. I'm going to take us out with Dr. Michael Eric Dyson because he talked about why this is important. Who reads this stuff? Who cares about this stuff? Why do we need to learn this stuff? Well, this is what Dr. Michael Eric Dyson had to say a couple of years ago at the Congressional Black Caucus Annual Legislative Conference.
Get education. We don't close the gap in wealth as much as even white brothers and sisters do with their education and ones who ain't even been to college. You know why? Because we got baby and boo boo and man and all them in the family that we don't forget. Now, people who manage wealth say, get rid of your family, don't let them lead y'all against black folks. You know, we got folk in prison, folk on the way to prison, trying to keep them out. We got babies and babies' mamas and stuff, to be real. So what ends up happening, they begin to siphon off the wealth production and creation of the family. We got to find a way to address that while at the same time being socially conscientious about the production of our own wealth so that we don't end up in the poorhouse with everybody else.
Okay, so whether or not you agree with Dr. Michael Eric Dyson's politics, he's kind of hopped around, you know, on different things over the years. And I think Dr. Boyce Watkins was, I think Dr. Dyson and Mark Lamont Hill skewered Dr. Boyce Watkins recently. And I think Dr. Dyson skewered Cornel West when Cornel West criticized President Obama. Whether or not you agree with any of that, at the 45th Congressional Black Caucus Annual Legislative Conference here in DC, Dr. Michael Eric Dyson was chairing the wealth building panel. And that was his intro. Basically, we need to learn about money and finance. And oftentimes it's the families we come from that siphon the wealth away so nobody gets ahead. So that's the significance of that quote. So everyone, I'm going to wrap up. Stay safe out there. As always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Always try to do your best. And I will talk to you the next time. Bye-bye.